Australia's enterprise agreement system has been on a fast track to collapse for some time. We are at the point now actually where the number of private sector workers who are covered by a current enterprise agreement is at 11%. So we've seen a halving of the coverage of the system across the private sector since 2013. So it's, one of the ways that we can point to the fact that the system isn't fit for purpose is we hear a lot about the growth of forms of contracting and franchising and the fissuring of businesses to become smaller and smaller or to design their practices in different ways. And one of the best insights we have into that is the explosion in the number of very small firms in Australia. We've had since 2004 growth of over 200,000 small firms with 1 to 4 employees. And at the same time, when you look at the larger scales of firms with over 200 employees, we've lost over 1,000 of those firms. So when we talk about the design of our economy, the design of our business is changing, and the design of our enterprise agreement system and our industrialisation system being out of kilter, that's the type of mismatch that we're looking at now.
So if the enterprise bargaining system was designed for an economy that no longer exists, what are the key elements on how it should be designed for a contemporary Australia?
So I think that we have to start from the first port of call on talking about enterprise bargaining. It's about bargaining. There has to be some design elements of a system that facilitate and support bargaining. At this point in time, the system doesn't facilitate that. The Fair Work Act doesn't protect or enshrine the right to genuine bargaining with proper employee representatives. So designing a new system will be about looking at the genuine ways that employers organise operations and ensuring that employees can organise themselves to meaningfully negotiate for their wages and conditions in relation to that employer bargaining power. So I think for the first important point for redesigning the system would be looking at expanding the bargaining scope. At this point, we have it fixed in law at an enterprise level. And that's just not the way that workers relate to each other and employers coordinate their businesses. So expanding that bargaining scope would include things like multi-employer, whether that be more than one, but it could also be about setting wages and conditions and negotiating for those conditions and wages across an industry, across a sector, perhaps for people of a similar job across Australia. So these are the types of the organisation of bargaining we have in the Nordic countries and lots of Western Europe, and where a lot of the Anglophone economies are moving towards as well.
Well, the economy now has to take into account, gig workers, as you were sort of alluding to there. Labor has promised to establish minimum pay and conditions for gig and employee-like workers, but how can EBAs be struck for these types of workers when they're often dealing with apps or algorithms for their pay and hours?
The problem we have with the realms of gig work is that by law, these workers are not defined as employees. And so when it comes to, and it remains to be seen what we see in changes from the Employment Summit and new industrial relations laws from the new Labor government. But if we are to start really introducing proper tests around the work that these gig workers do, we can, by all those genuine tests of employee-like work, we would say that these workers are like employees. They don't have agency and control over their work. And in that sense, when we are talking about bargaining rights, we've had some steps toward the capacity of gig workers to collectively bargain. That happened through changes to the Competition Consumer Commission's framework for contractors. But what we need to see now is that continued progress on that into the industrial relations system.
And I guess when you look back to 2009 when the Fair Work Act was designed, it was there to drive economic prosperity and be mutually beneficial for both the worker and the employer. What do you think the biggest challenges are for the upcoming industrial relations round table, and what do you think needs to be achieved there?
It's about the source of confidence and investment, and that's where we get productivity. And you'll hear productivity be rolled out time and again. Everyone's got different claims to it. As an economist, I can tell you that there's a lot of misuse or, let's say, misdefinitions of productivity. We can't create and continue to propagate an economy in Australia that depends on declining real wages, and that's what some employers define as productivity, but it's not. We have to be talking about long-term horizons for investment, and that's business investment, which is currently at post-war record lows. But it's about people and skills, and everything that makes up an economy is the efforts and the labour of people.
Alison Pennington, thanks for your time.
My pleasure.